Okay, so this is rear wheel bearing replacement. This is a 2013 Ford Focus. Should be the same for probably 2012 up through at least 2015, I would think. I've already got the old one off, which is here. Got the new one partially on. It's not tightened on though. But basically there's 4 bolts that hold this in and go through here. These bolts use a E14 socket. So it looks kind of like that. And you can get to it. You don't have to take too much off to access them. They're accessible from the back. Basically you have to take the tire off, easy, and then you got to get the drum off. Not so easy, at least in this case. I had to use the 2 threaded holes in the drum. You have to get a bolt. You find one with the right threading size. It must be a common one because I had some bolts laying in the garage. Found one that fit. It just screws in. You'll see the 2 threaded holes that are around the studs, the wheel studs. So there's 2 of them. I just used 1 bolt. I put it in. I got it to pop out a little. I moved it down. You could use 2 bolts, might be more efficient, but you could do it with 1. So basically you want to screw that in there and get it to pop off of the wheel, because otherwise in a lot of cases it's seized on there. So from what I saw online, I haven't sized it out, but it looked like maybe it was a 8mm by 1 bolt. But if you've got an assortment of bolts in the garage, just find one that fits, or do some online research. You might be able to find the exact bolt size. But the bolts are very hard to get out for. You can see here, this is how the old one sits in there like that. You got the 4 bolts that go from the back through here. Like I said, E14, but they're in there very, very tight. You don't want to snap these bolts off. If you did, you're looking at a real hard time getting that out of there. So what I had to do was I took a torch. So you'll need like a propane torch. You're gonna sit here. So this is what I got, just a Benzomatic regular torch that I use for like brazing. Just hit the torch. What you want to watch out for, and I initially had my brake pads, the shoes still up here. You can take them down. It might make it a lot easier, because what I found out later is even once I got the bolts out, this was seized in there pretty good. So you'll probably have to eventually take them off anyways. Might as well do it in the beginning. Watch it when you're using the torch not to melt any of these rubber pieces here for your brake shoes. This is your wheel cylinder that pushes out. These are rubber. If I were heating this and the torch was sitting up there, you might melt it, and then you're going to be rebuilding a wheel cylinder. You don't want to have to do that. So just make sure you angle it in a way you're not going to hit this. I had to heat up all 4 bolts, so I did it one at a time. You can use a 3/8 ratchet like this, and the E14, and you can access it from the back. I've got 2 extension sizes. I've got a 6-inch extension and a 3-inch extension. The 3-inch works good for the ones closest to the back of the car. So when I pop this on here and I go in from the back, you won't be able to see it real good unless you kind of get back in there. But back behind here, you'll feel around until you get it on there. And then once it's on there, put the ratchet on, and then you can loosen it up. So I'll show you what these bolts look like. I still have to thread lock them. They have factory thread lock on them, which makes them really hard to get out, aside from being seized on there. So what I did with this torch is when I was heating this up, first I would heat it. I'd put it on there for about a 10 count, and then I'd have the ratchet already on there. And once I had it up in a position, you can either use something for leverage, like you put a wrench on the end of it, or what I also did was, if you have the ratchet in here and you have a hammer, you can just hold the ratchet with the one hand to support it so it stays on straight, and just start hitting the end of that until it finally goes. So that's one way to get it to go. And once I had the heat on there, it came off. Not real easy, but it did come off. It just took a couple hits. And then on a couple of the other ones where I couldn't get the hammer in real good, I just used if you got a breaker bar, that'll work. Or if you want to put a wrench on the end of your ratchet for the extra leverage, then you're able to get enough torque on there to get them free. So go ahead. So you really don't have to take out somebody I think took out their rear suspension to get at it. You don't have to do that. You just have to have the right extension, and you got to use the heat. You're really not going to get it out of there without using the heat. Okay, so once you have the bolt out, this is kind of what it looks like. And on some of them you can see on the threads the blue Loctite that they used from the factory when they first put these together. When you put the heat on there, that'll kind of burn that away a little bit.
Let's see.
Along with the, you know, you got a little bit of rust on there, a little corrosion, so they are hard to break free initially. Let you clean it up. I've got some blue Loctite.
Show me the label.
That's just Permatex medium strength thread locker blue. So just put a little bit of on your threads. All right, now let it soak in there a little bit. So reassembly, like I said, I already got the other one out. Now the other thing I had to do though is, aside from using the heat on these bolts to break them free, once I had the 4 bolts out, I thought I was good to go, but you got one more step to do, because most likely you're not going to be able to get this wheel hub out of here. The wheel bearing is going to be stuck in there. I've seen some online forums where people would just get to the back side of this, you know, where this is sitting in there, and they would just take a large hammer and like maybe a block of wood or something and try to hit it from the back. Not a lot of room back there to swing, so probably real hard to do. I tried that, it wasn't very successful. You may not have one. If you do though, they're real helpful. If you don't, they're not too expensive. You can probably get it from Harbor Freight. But they make these portable puller kits, which you can use for body work and also some mechanical work. What I had is, I got this guy on here, and what this does is when you pump it, it opens up. The little jaw will open, right? So it's a spreader. And what I had to do is I would put it back. This metal plate's pretty thick back here, so I'd rest it. Make sure you're not resting it against the actual bearing itself, or the wheel hub here. Make sure it's against the plate. And then what I had to do was I had to kind of pump this up, get it on there. I had to do it real hard to one side, move it around to the other side. I eventually got this thing worked free. Finally, it just came flying out when it finally popped, because it does seize on there pretty good. If you look at the back side here where it rests in there, there's a lot of rust. So it was seized on there really good. It took a lot of force to get it off. So you might want to make sure you have all the tools, because once you tear this thing apart, you want to get it done. So if you have all the tools you need, like I said, this comes in really handy for breaking this hub out. But you could always use the brute force method with a hammer, a large hammer, and something that'll fit back in there. The only problem is it's hard getting a swing radius under the car. You might have to slide under the car and really hit it hard from behind. It's okay if you break this, because I mean, this is plastic. This is where your ABS sensor is. The new one comes with one already on there, so you don't have to worry about damaging it as long as you got the new part on hand. So the torque specs I found online were about 110 Newton meters, which is about 81 foot-pounds. So once you have this apart and you put the new one on, you put your thread lock on, your next step is going to be using your torque wrench, which I got right here, and tightening down these bolts to about 81 foot-pounds. So let's tighten this in. Like I said, these 2 bolts on the back, they are the 3-inch extension works good for getting you in there. The other ones, you're going to use a 6-inch to get yourself in there. Okay, so we went ahead and thread lock, tightened down all four of the bolts to 81 foot-pounds, 110 Newton meters. The next step, since we had to get the brake shoes out of the way, and what I did on these, rather than taking all the springs off because it's hard to put them back together, I let the springs on. If you pop, there's 2 pins that kind of come through the back on each side that have these retainer clips that hold it on. Once you pop those off, this thing kind of you can get it to come loose. You have to separate it at the bottom, or it's got this little, where the bottom of the shoes connect. And then once you work it off, it'll just come down in a whole assembly like this. So much easier than trying to rebuild it with all the springs and stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and get this guy put back together. Might pull it out a little. So the top of the shoes, I'm gonna go to these 2 here. The bottoms there's some lock pins down there as they kind of rest in. And then once those are in place, we still got these 2 pins with the retainer clips. That's what's gonna hold the whole assembly against this back plate. So just here, just kind of rest there. We're gonna pull this thing a little tight, get it there. So if you kind of look at the bottom here, underneath, I can get the focus out here. Right here is kind of where they go. This one rests here, and then this one on the other side is resting there. It's a little hard to focus in on, but that's where they go. So once the bottom ones are in, then you make sure these top ones snap into place. These 2 tops of the shoes, these 2 sections go on these here on the wheel cylinder. So that one's in place, and then I pull it back so I get separated enough. Might have to leverage a little bit with a screwdriver here. Actually, to get this to stay put, what I might have to do is put one of these pins in first to hold one side in position. So the pin comes in through the back, and then this thing kind of compresses down, slides up in there. Of course, not easily. You know, I have it halfway on. That'll probably keep it from popping back out while I get this other one in position here. Now we're gonna spring. There we go. Now that's over where it's supposed to go. I'm gonna stick these back, kind of centered again. Get this other pin on the other side. Here's my retaining clip. Here's my pin coming through the back. Let's see. And it kind of fits right through here. This little kind of oblong shaped part of it, not the round one in the middle, but the little oblong one closer to the top. And then this has to get pressed down like a spring. Once it's in there, you should be able to just tap it up. There. Now it kind of snapped in place. So this pin goes through both sides of this clip. This side, I had it through the one just to hold it. But the shoe, you got to press the shoe all the way back. Press down on this clip. Once you get it to kind of catch enough to hold. Of course, it's not going to play nice. Go ahead. Okay, so what I had to do is just kind of push the screwdriver against that clip to get it compressed enough, because not quite enough finger strength to get it in there. But once it's caught under a little, push it all the way up so it catches. Now you should be good to go. So that's all together. Make sure each side of the top of the shoe is on this pin coming out here from the wheel cylinder on both sides. The bottom of these should be tucked behind this little upside down smiley face looking piece here. It should be tucked behind there. and you should be good to go. So same thing when you're initially taking this apart. What I did is I just took the screwdriver in here, kind of rested it on there, tapped it down to pop this off on each side. These pins come out the back, that's off, and then you can pull it off the top of this wheel cylinder at the top, and then once it's off it'll kind of collapse, and you can get these pretty easy on the bottom. You pop them out, and this whole thing you just kind of let lay down. That way you don't have to worry about putting these springs back together. But what you might want to do, just in case, is go ahead and take a picture of it the way it is now, because if it came apart on you and springs went everywhere and you weren't sure which spring went where, it's good to have a picture that you can kind of reference back to as you try to put it back together. So shoes are in place and he's good to go. And these, you'll want to spray this down with some brake parts cleaner, just in case if you used any WD-40 to loosen things up, which you really want to avoid spraying WD-40 in there because you don't want to contaminate your brake shoes. But you'll spray it down real good with brake parts cleaner. Take your drum, pop it on. You want to slide it past your shoes first. The inside of this, you want to kind of get this shoes looped in first. While these are kind of lined up here with your wheel studs, and then just push right on, just like that, hopefully. One last step is, and when you remove this, you would want to have disconnected the sensor cable for your ABS sensor. You just go back here, have your sensor cable, and just plug it back in. You can kind of feel around. You could get underneath the car and look up in there if you couldn't see it, but it's just right there. And you'll just push that cable on. So I got it by feel. I could just feel it slip on there, and you push it in, you hear it, that little clip catch, and you know you're good to go. And I just put the tire back on, tighten it up. But again, when you raise the vehicle, safety of course, use your jack underneath here, the right spot. Put a jack stand in a good location. Make sure you're being safe when you're under there. And then now it's just a matter of putting the wheel back on, tightening on the lug nuts, lower it. We're going to do a road test on it. Make sure that annoying sound went away, and good to go.